just to fund my golden boy brother's luxury European getaway. My dad actually smirked when he delivered the news, tossing a set of keys on the table and saying, "Your house paid for their fun. Family helps family, get over it." Everyone expected me to scream, cry, or completely lose my mind. Instead, I just smiled back. The pure satisfaction on my dad's face immediately vanished, replaced by sheer confusion. He slammed his fist down and shouted, "Why are you so calm?" I didn't say a word. I just reached into my bag, opened a thick manila folder, and slid the documents across the table. They thought they ruined me, but they didn't realize they just walked into a legal nightmare. Follow my story until the end to see what was inside. My name is Chloe, and at 26 years old, I had finally achieved what everyone in my family thought was impossible. I bought my dream house completely on my own. While my parents spent my entire life coddling my younger brother, Leo, and treating him like a golden prince who could do no wrong, I was the one working 50-hour weeks, skipping vacations, and saving every single penny. Leo was 23, unemployed, and lived a life of pure luxury funded entirely by my parents' desperate overreach and credit card debt. They constantly pressured me to bail him out, whispering that family helps family, but I kept my finances completely separate. When a massive corporate promotion required me to go on an intensive, 2-week business trip across the country, I knew I needed someone to check on the property. My house was my absolute pride and joy, so despite our strained history, I trusted my parents with a spare set of keys. I explicitly told them the keys were strictly for emergency maintenance, like a burst pipe or a leaking roof. They smiled, hugged me, and promised everything would be perfectly safe. I boarded my flight feeling a rare sense of peace, completely unaware that the moment my plane took off, my parents and Leo were already stepping into my living room. They weren't looking for leaks or maintenance issues. They were looking for the trust documents, ready to exploit my hard work to fund Leo's reckless lifestyle, setting off a chain of events that would change our lives forever. The moment my taxi pulled up to the curb after that grueling 2-week trip, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. A massive moving truck was backed entirely into my driveway, and 2 complete strangers were casually carrying my velvet living room armchairs right out the front door. Panic surging through my veins, I threw my luggage onto the grass and sprinted inside, demanding to know what on earth was happening. The movers looked utterly confused and told me they were just following orders from the new owners. I didn't waste a single second. I drove straight to my parents' house, my hands shaking violently against the steering wheel. When I burst through their front door, the sight inside stopped me cold. My dad, my mom, and Leo were gathered around the dining table, clinking glasses of expensive champagne. Leo was proudly holding up a first-class flight itinerary to Europe. My dad looked up, saw my furious face, and actually smirked. He casually tossed a spare set of house keys across the table. It clattered against the wood as he uttered the most chilling words I've ever heard. "Your house paid for their fun. Family helps family, Chloe. Get over it." He explained, with disturbing pride, that they had unearthed an old family trust agreement from his home office. Believing they still managed the property under that old legal umbrella, they had hastily listed and sold my dream home to an aggressive corporate buyer. Every single dime of the massive cash advance had already been transferred to Leo to liquidate his mounting credit card debts and finance a month-long, elite luxury getaway to Paris and Rome. My dad's words echoed through the room, but instead of screaming or crying like they expected, I just stood there. Then, a slow smile spread across my face. Before I tell you how that smile completely shattered their celebration, I want to take a quick moment to ask you, my viewers, where are you watching this story from right now? I absolutely love seeing how far these stories travel across the globe. And tell me honestly, if your own flesh and blood did something this incredibly deceitful to you, what would your immediate reaction be? Would you walk away, or would you fight back? My dad slammed his heavy fist onto the table, the champagne glasses rattling loudly as he shouted, "Why are you so calm?" He was furious that he couldn't break me. What he didn't realize was that my calmness wasn't a sign of shock or submission. It was the absolute, icy clarity of a woman who knew her toxic family had just walked right into a massive, irreversible trap. They thought they had successfully ruined my life, but they had no idea they were holding a ticking financial time bomb. I slowly unzipped my bag, keeping my eyes locked on my dad's increasingly anxious expression. The smirks on Leo and my mom's faces were already beginning to fade, replaced by a tense, uncomfortable silence. I pulled out a thick, official-looking manila folder and set it down on the table, right next to their empty champagne glasses. "You think you sold my house?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet as I opened the folder with deliberate precision. "You should have listened to me when I told you years ago that I kept my finances completely separate." I slid the top document across the polished wood. It was a certified legal deed from 6 months ago. I explained to them, slowly and clearly, that I had noticed large, unexplained withdrawals from our old family trust last year. Because of their erratic and suspicious financial behavior, I had quietly hired a real estate attorney to legally dissolve my property's connection to that trust entirely. My house had been moved into a private, independent LLC that I owned exclusively. The paperwork my parents had unearthed in their sloppy rush to fund Leo's lifestyle was completely outdated and legally invalid. They had signed a bill of sale using a canceled title deed. By handing over a house they had absolutely no legal right to control, they hadn't just crossed a line within our family, they had committed outright, high-level real estate fraud against a massive corporate buyer. Leo reached out, his hands trembling violently as he grabbed the papers, his face turning an ashen shade of gray as he tried to find a loophole that didn't exist. My mom stared at the certified state seals on the documents, her breath catching in her throat. The realization was finally sinking in. They hadn't stolen from a helpless daughter. They had swindled a major corporation, and the legal shield they thought they had was completely non-existent. The room turned completely ice-cold as the weight of my words settled over them. My dad grabbed the folder, his eyes darting frantically across the legal clauses, searching for any saving grace. But there was none. The legal trap had officially sprung shut, and they were caught dead center. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. "The corporate buyers you dealt with aren't a small-time family," I continued calmly. "They are a multi-million-dollar investment firm with an entire department of ruthless corporate attorneys. Because the title deed my parents had provided was entirely fraudulent, the sale was automatically null and void. The company's legal team had already flagged the transaction, locked down the escrow account, and issued an immediate demand for the return of their $300,000 cash deposit. But the situation was actually much worse than that. According to the strict terms of the fraudulent contract they had eagerly signed, backing out or failing to deliver a clean title triggered a massive, automatic financial penalty for breach of contract." My mom looked like she was about to throw up. She turned her head slowly toward Leo, her voice shaking. "Leo, the money. Give them back the money right now." Leo let out a pathetic, high-pitched whine, burying his face in his hands. He admitted, through choked-up tears, that the money was entirely gone. The moment the wire transfer had cleared into his account, he had aggressively paid off his long-overdue debt collectors. Worse, he had spent the remaining balance on non-refundable, premium first-class flights, 5-star luxury hotel suites across Europe, and high-end designer wardrobe pieces for his upcoming trip. There was absolutely nothing left to return. My parents were now legally liable for a massive sum of missing corporate funds, facing imminent civil lawsuits and severe criminal charges for grand larceny and real estate fraud. My dad fell out of his chair and practically dropped to his knees, his arrogant smirk completely replaced by sheer, unadulterated terror. He begged me to sign a retroactive agreement, a paper stating that I had authorized the sale after all, which would technically save them from imminent arrest. My mom was openly sobbing, wailing about how a prison sentence would completely ruin Leo's bright future. I looked at the three of them, completely unmoved by their desperate tears, and flatly refused to sign a single thing. I told them they were finally going to face the consequences of their actions. With the corporate attorneys threatening to involve the police within 48 hours, my parents' golden empire completely imploded. To avoid criminal prosecution, they had to take immediate, drastic measures. They were forced to completely liquidate their entire retirement savings, draining accounts they had spent 30 years building. When that wasn't nearly enough to cover the corporate deposit and the massive penalties, they had no choice but to hastily list and sell their own primary home at a massive loss. Leo's luxury European vacation was immediately canceled, and his premium, non-refundable tickets went completely to waste. My parents had to move into a tiny, cramped two-bedroom apartment on the rough side of town, and they forced Leo to get a grueling, low-wage job just to help them pay their new monthly rent. The toxic favoritism that had defined my entire childhood was thoroughly crushed under the suffocating weight of their own greed. 3 months later, the dust is finally settled, and my life is completely unrecognizable. I used the legal documents from my folder to evict the corporate buyer's movers, reclaiming my dream house free and clear. However, the memories there felt tainted, so I sold the property on my own terms and purchased a stunning, peaceful condo overlooking the city. For the first time in my 26 years of life, I am completely free from my family's toxic manipulation and endless emotional guilt. I have blocked all of their numbers, choosing to invest my time, energy, and love into people who actually respect my boundaries and value my worth. What my parents and Leo never understood is that real family doesn't steal your hard work to fund their own reckless desires. They thought they could use a forged past to erase my future, but greed always demands a receipt in the end. If this story taught you anything about standing your ground against right now, I am leaving 2 other incredible revenge stories on the final screen that I know will absolutely surprise you. Click on either of them to keep watching, and